On this episode of the Brilliant Humans podcast, I'm joined by Nicky Banger, a former professional footballer and now CEO of the Knights Foundation. Through the foundation, Nicky is dedicated to raising funds and providing support for families with children who have additional needs, helping them from diagnosis right through to independence. Today, Nicky's here to talk about someone who's overcome incredible odds to become a truly brilliant human and whose story has inspired him deeply. I'm really looking forward to hearing more. So welcome, Nicky.
Good evening, Jonathan. Lovely to be on your show.
Oh, it's so good to see you. How are you doing?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Coming up to the big 55 in about 4 weeks. So I don't know where all those years have gone. Years are flying by fastly, but yes, still loads of energy and positivity. So it's all good.
Well, I can't imagine you with anything but energy and positivity, Nicky. And obviously, I mentioned in the intro there, I think it would be remiss of me not to just touch upon the fact that you used to play football professionally. We met when you were working as a commercial director in the world of football. So tell us a bit about that. So you played for Southampton.
Yeah, got picked up at 12. And I used to play for the Southampton City side from 10 years old till 12 years old. And then I got picked up by Southampton Football Club at 12. So went for my first training session, which was extremely nervous because I'd got to the ground and obviously there was an array of players between 12 and 16. So straight away, I felt I was quite top of my game in the team that I was at. And then there was a huge leveler of all these young individuals that were very, very good players. You had to grow up fast, really. It's quite a brutal situation because back then, before you signed an associate schoolboy contract at 14, at any one time, you could be released. And there wasn't, plans for, I guess, ease you out of football. It was quite brutal. One day you turn up and people sat next to you weren't there anymore.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, I'm sure people listening will go, right, how did we go from a very talented teenage footballer to being the CEO of a foundation that helps families with disabilities? So I think now is a very good time for me to ask, because this will help tell the story.
Yeah.
Nicky, who is your brilliant human that you'd like to celebrate today?
Well, my brilliant human, and I've thought about this a lot because I could pick so many people, but it's actually my daughter. And the reason why my daughter's my brilliant human is because she was born at 2 pounds 3 ounces. She was 3 months premature, and after 3 months of feeding her for a test tube through an incubator, we finally get her home, and it was a difficult year because she didn't really have balance. She couldn't crawl. So we thought it was because she was premature. We actually found out by a physio, not the doctor, a year down the line that she had cerebral palsy. And it wasn't just because she was born disabled, but the adversity that she went through mentally and physically would, I think, destroy a lot of human beings, in the sense of going through so much adversity for such a little girl was really, really challenging. So she had both hips broken, reset, both ankles broken, reset, 2 of her vertebrae taken out when she was 7. She had to overcome adversity. She got anorexia at, I think it was 12, and she still has it mildly now, but mostly got rid of about by 17. And then the element that Sophia had, she had nothing really that she was in control of. So the only thing that she was in control of was her eating, I guess, or her choice to eat. And the pressure at school and, girls in secondary school, there was quite a lot of cyberbullying, online bullying, and just girls being, not very nice at times, I guess. So going through all that adversity, so it was really difficult because she didn't really have any role models from 12 to look up and visualize and say, well, look, I can be that person at 17, because she was just struggling with life, just trying to cope with facing her adversity with disability, the bullying, not really fitting in school, really, the pressure that it caused at home and the family dynamic. Because I thought, you tried as a dad protect your child and your daughter, but partly you need her to grow up herself, face her demons. It was a very difficult situation for many years. And I sort of was quite strong on her purely because of my fear of her being hurt, being disrespected, I guess. So from that perspective, from all that adversity, sort of the one thing I used to try and teach her is resilience. So yeah, it was really, really dark at sometimes. We never had any thoughts, ideas. Me and my wife have sort of settled for the fact that we probably thought we were going to be carers for life. So our whole plan of retirement and, is she going to live independent? Is she going to have a house? Is she going to get married? Can she have kids? When she went through the anorexia, she could even be here, time she got to 16.
Yeah.
And I guess all through that, she never stopped trying. She had some dark times. She had these tattoos put on her arm about never give up and I can and I will. She sort of like just carried on. And I just think, God, if I went through anything that she went through, I would have crumbled for sure.
Yeah.
The light at the end of the tunnel is now, even though she's gone to Reading to study law, I would never have thought really that Charles was getting a full-time job, or, we sort of talked about it and thought about it, but we didn't think it would quite happen. And then one of the biggest law firms in the world has actually approached her about going and doing a couple of days a week while she's doing her finals to sort of graduate. She's got her first wage. So yeah, super proud of both
Wow,
the kids.
what an
very,
incredible yeah. And I want to come on to your son as well.
Yeah.
Nikki, just my mind is blown. You just sort of put her life into 10 minutes there, but let's go back to the start, because so her name's Sophia.
Yes.
Obviously she was, how old is she now? She's 20.
She's 21.
She's 21.
Yeah.
So excuse my ignorance here. Was the cerebral palsy, was it linked to her being born prematurely? I don't know enough.
We think it's my wife starved of oxygen. We didn't know that. Obviously, she didn't feel it. We went in. She didn't feel too good, so we went into the hospital. They checked her over, said, "Come on, you can go home now." Just as she was coming on, about 7 doctors rushed in, said, "No, the baby's coming now. We need to do it right now." So I was kicked out, and then when I came back in about an hour later, Sophia had already moved to an incubator, so I didn't see her. Couldn't see her till the next morning. And yeah, she was 2 pounds 3 ounces. So to show you how petite she was, we had to go to Toys R Us to buy a dolly hat to fit on her skull because she was that petite. And it was, I don't know what I felt, to be honest. It was, I don't know. I can't remember how, I don't think I felt upset. I can't tell you how I felt. Maybe I just felt numb and just trying to deal with it day by day, because you can't process anything outside of that. And, it was crazy old time. So she came home after 3 months full term. And like I said, you wouldn't, and apart from her balance and that, you wouldn't notice that she was so petite, but you wouldn't notice because we had her in a pram. You wouldn't notice until the biggest test was the fact that when she went from a buggy to a wheelchair, because it was the reality that she's disabled. I suppose that's, for any parent, that's quite tough, because the reality kicks in because it's physical. It's physical, and
yes.
You can see it, and everybody else can visually see it. And then we'd have problems when we invited going to parties. All the kids were running around, and Sophia would be the only one sat in a wheelchair. So I got quite anxious about, I don't want to be here. So we'd lead the party, and then I'd only start doing parties for kids with accessibility issues. I think my fate going back in the day, when I look forward, I was always about inclusivity, and I didn't feel that as a parent, because our whole circle of influence changed, because we started navigating our family days out and friendship with people that had additional needs.
Yeah, and you talk about her. Yeah, and even because even being in hospital for 3 months, I mean, that is a huge lift for you and your wife, who's called Stephanie, and not that I need to tell you that, I'm just telling the viewers, the listeners.
No, that's good.
But I mean, because when Logan was born, when my son was born, we had a couple of nights in the intensive care unit, and the nurses were incredible. But what we noticed, we were the lucky ones, because it was very quick for him, and we got out pretty quickly. But we said, how long have those babies been in? Oh, they've been in for 2 months, and they've probably got. And you just realise that even a couple of days in that environment, and having to balance that with work. So how did you and Steph balance that time? I guess she was in there all the time as well.
So we were both working full time.
Right.
We'd have to finish work, go and see her, we'd do split shifts. And bless her, Steph, all through both pregnancies, she never stopped working, because we had to earn money like everybody else. We just had to adjust. I had to tell my bosses that I was working for at the moment. And then, I was just retiring out of football then and transitioning into my second career. So Steph had to start taking jobs where she could work from home instead of literally going to work all the time. But then every choice with Sophia's disability, where we lived, having an accessible toilet, having accessible ramps, the patio changed, everything. The whole dynamic changed of our life completely, how we holidayed. And you just have to overthink about everything that you do because she had so much spasticity in her body because that's what cerebral palsy did. So when she was 7, we actually were told by the NHS that she wasn't a worse enough candidate to be given the SDR treatment in England. They wanted to give it to more positive children, had a better outcome. So physio at the time.
SDR is
it's called.
SDR?
I can't remember what the S stands for, but it's dorsal rhizotomy. So basically,
Okay.
there's certain vertebra in your back where it actually, by taking certain vertebra out, you can release all the spasticity in certain parts of your body.
Right,
I don't know
okay.
how. So the difference is, for example, Sophia couldn't open her hands, but by weakening her motor skills, they could. But it's a permanent. So you've got to make the decision about her taking out 2 of her vertebra forever at 7 years old.
Yeah. Wow.
So again, it's got a lot of pressure. I had to raise just under £100,000 in 3 months for her to go because we stayed there for a month. So I did that
And
as
where
well.
was where did the operation happen?
It was in St. Louis in America.
So you had to fly to America.
So Dr. Park, he was the one that was the founder of that operation. So he did over 4,000 babies. But while they're in operating, you had to do a video about her personality because they wouldn't operate if she was quite timid. So she had to have a bit of gumption about her because about a day after the surgery, they get her up walking. But she was so thin. I mean, she was like skeleton thin. She was so petite. So it was just, to be fair, when I look back, it has been quite a fight forever.
Yeah.
We've always had to fight for something, not physically fight, but fight for operations, fight for getting the right wheelchairs, fight for getting the teachers to give equal opportunities at school, fights for this, fight for that. And you just feel it's hard enough dealing with a disabled child, but the system is getting better. But it wasn't as good as it could have been back in the day.
Yeah. But I mean, no wonder. I mean, you're talking this, and anyone listening, I'm just thinking, no wonder she's so resilient. And we kind of know the punchline. She's now studied. Well, she studied law. She's been offered a job at a massive law firm. I mean, you keep using the word adversity, and it's so true. She's come through so much adversity and is so strong. So do you remember when, because like you say, I mean, I can't imagine going through any of that, and she was small and petite and she had her various battles. Do you remember when you first looked at her and went, oh my word, she has got some fight in her? Do you remember how old she was when you realised that?
Yeah, I think it was, she had another major operation where she went into a hospital and she had a major issue with an epidural, which there was a hole in her epidural, and she started to go blind because they kept on overdosing on opioids because they were doing a lot of medicines through a computer, but nobody was looking after from 11 o'clock till 7 because they didn't have enough staff. So I'd go in there every day and she looked like she was going to die. She was so grey. And then I sort of found out that there was a hole in the epidural. Anyway, they fixed that. She come back. And I think she just got to an age where, she would just ask for things. And the difference is with my wife, I think she's always felt guilty about Sophia's birth and all that, like where I was completely, I only knew how to deal with not an iron rod as such, but I only knew to deal with strength because of the other side was fear. And I didn't want to show the fear because I didn't want to crumble in front of her. I suppose every time that she's had adversity, I wouldn't let her wriggle out of stuff. I got her to front it, to get on with it.
Yeah.
And I didn't show, I don't think I've ever showed her any sort of weakness about anything. So, because again, then I think that was just a fear factor of me wanting her to get to where she is today. But if you would have told me that 21 years ago, I would have laughed. But the fact is, in only the last week, I've never seen her so joyous. So, I've done it on my own, Dad, and look at me. not in an arrogant way, but just a thumbs up to the dark stuff and coming out the other side. And I've always said to her that I wanted her to be a role model and I wanted her to shine. So if she remembered the 12-year-old version of her, how would she help the 12-year-old now that she's gone through it? Because kids with disabilities, they don't really have people to look up to. So when you go into secondary school, you know what it's like, even if you've got no disability. But if we all had someone that was 17 who said, listen, you'll get through, it's going to be crap at school, it's going to be tough at times, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. I wish she would have had that person. And now I'm saying to her, she needs to give back to the people and she can be a beacon of light saying that, look at me, I've done it, you can do it, sort of thing.
Absolutely. And this is exactly why I'm so glad we're here celebrating her today, because you use that word right at the start. You use that role model or those words right at the start. And it struck me, you know, you're right. Just the exposure to any disability, really, it wasn't really around back in the early 2000s as much as it is today. But now certainly watching children's television, I mean, I've got a 7-year-old myself, and he's exposed to a lot more disabilities. So, as a Blue Peter presenter, she's in a wheelchair. Or you've got Rosie Jones, who's a celebrated comedian. You've got, you know, physical disabilities. You've got Down syndrome and Strictly Come Dancing. So it's all of these things, which is really helping, like you say. And actually, Sophia, while she didn't have that, I can imagine she is going to be a heck of a poster girl for you know, little girls and little boys with cerebral palsy to say, look, life might be tough, but you can achieve this stuff.
Yeah, and I think what we try to do now moving forward about the Knights Foundation is about inclusivity, but also when we do all of our events, I invite families that have got nothing wrong with their children as well, because I want them to ask awkward questions. Why has that little boy got defenders on? Why is he being very loud? Why is he being naughty? And it's sort of like educating young kids to sort of ask the questions because they're young and they want to, because then you'd like to think when they're older, instead of then being bullying these kids with ADHD or autism or whatever it may be, they'd be more empathetic to saying, hold on a minute, leave them alone. Leave them alone, because they've been brought up in a scenario where it is like that. You know, we meet a lot of families, not just from birth, from accidents on motorbikes, whether it be a car crash, whether it be something, and a lot of the people back in the day, we would have been called obviously naughty kids because we were talking at the time. Now you look back and say, well, are they slightly autistic? You know, or is there a different scenario now? So it has changed a hell of a lot. But I think now people are starting to embrace people and be a bit more understanding and celebrate that there are some amazing people that are severely autistic, but they are so clever. They are so clever, and people like me would never be able to think or act the way that they do. And I think that's the difference. I think it's changed me in my life.
You're listening to the Brilliant Humans podcast, where, here's the catch, no one is talking about themselves, only the brilliant human who has changed their life. If you've got someone you'd like to celebrate, drop us a note at brillianthumanspodcast@gmail.com.
So this is a very good story. I've got to tell you this. So I got a random phone call from a doctor saying, Nikki, I've heard about the Knights Foundation. Maybe you're only going 3 months. My son wants to go to GB in wheelchair football. However, a certain football club, we need to raise 15,000 for his chair. And I was thinking, oh my God, that's a lot of money. I didn't say that to him. So in my head, I'm thinking, and he said, Southampton Football Club won't get involved. Portsmouth may have done it. And he said, can you help? So I said, yes. And then I panicked because I'm thinking, I don't know how to do that. So I was travelling up to Newcastle with my boss, who's a massive Newcastle fan. And we started talking about Kevin Keegan. And Kevin Keegan is my hero. And I saw him at ex-Saints Golf Days. We'd always spoken. I'd always tried to get him to do a sportsman's dinner at the non-league clubs I was working at. And in a respectful way, he told me that he was too big for that. You know, Barclays Bank pay him X amount, a lot of money to do an evening with. And he never said it that way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so my boss, Tony, who's an absolute crazy man at Newcastle. So we're driving up and I'm talking to him about this scenario that I'm in. And he's gone, I said, I'll tell you what I could do. I could ring Kevin Keegan now. What do you think? And he's gone, you've got Kevin Keegan's mobile. I said, yeah. So I phoned Kevin Keegan up in his car. And to be completely honest, I didn't think Kevin was going to pick the phone up because most of the time he goes to dial and he'd text back or whatever. Picks the phone. Oh, Nikki, how are you? Not too bad, Kevin. How are you? I said, and I sort of said to him, listen, I transitioned out of football now, Kev. Oh, that's a shame, Nick. And I just said, listen, I run a charity now and I've got a child with additional needs. I'm ever so sorry. I said, no, it's all good. It's not a negative story. But I've got to raise 15 grand for this wheelchair in about 5 months' time at Wentworth. Would you kindly consider? And he said, I'll do it. So my boss is looking at me going, oh my God, Kevin Keegan's coming to Wentworth. And I couldn't believe it myself, actually. And then on top of that, we got Laurie McMenemy to come along because Laurie signed Kevin from Hamburg. So Laurie was my manager at some point, or director of football. Then I end up getting the Gurkhas to come and do a talk and the military that do Illuminous drums. And I've sat there at my own event, sell out, thinking, oh my God, this is like the best night of my life. And then I guess from there, the reality of what was able to happen kicked in. And then I started to look at auction prizes as equipment. So when I get people to buy something like a signed shirt of Kevin Keegan, I would align a piece of equipment that was needed for a family with special needs. So then people would go, it's not like eBay, can you get it the cheapest? This is, you're theoretically buying a walking frame for somebody that needs it. So by presenting this wheelchair, I put it on the stage and I said, ladies and gentlemen, this wheelchair, this gentleman, he wants to represent Great Britain in aid of us. And it's 15,000. That's what we're going to raise tonight. So we raised all this money and he did represent Great Britain as a lovely story. And I think that's where suddenly me being a dad, and the whole life I've gone through with Sophia and my son and my wife, it started mapping out how the foundation grew. For example, I'm a big adrenaline junkie with motorbikes, so I go quite fast on them from time to time, or the national speed limit, I may say there, sometimes.
Yeah, this is, if any police officers are listening, he's well within the law.
Only sometimes. So I'd come in from the house once and she's, oh, Dad, what was it like to go on your bike? And I said, oh, babe, excuse my French, it's a bit like shitting yourself, but quite exciting at the same time. And she just looked at me with this blank face. She had no idea about what it's like to go fast or the wind. So there was a gentleman in Portsmouth that he was a sailor but broke his neck at 19, and then he decided to set up like a Sunseeker boat called Wet Wheels, where they would take people with wheelchairs and additional needs and take them on the Solent. I met him, and then I started funding all the kids and their families and grandparents to go on the boat so they could understand balance or being imbalanced and understanding the thrill of speed, fear, but excitement. Because I wanted to really break the barriers down of the red tape of, oh, you can't do this, be careful of that. So the opposite. So, for example, when Soph was about 7, I told her at 16 she's going to do a parachute jump, and she did. At 16, at 17,000 feet, I took her up with other people and she jumped out of a plane. It was a weird feeling seeing the wheelchair by the side of the plane and then suddenly the plane's not there and there's just a wheelchair. I must admit, I put the fear of God up me thinking, oh God, what have I done? But she ended up doing a couple of them. And then I took her to Heron Lake, which is off the M25. I met this Paralympian. And then I sort of said, can we take, we took about 100 families to do this. They sit in like a water ski and they gradually pull away. And these kids, as long as they can grit, can get the feeling of water skiing. And then it started, I started then transitioning to making all the events inclusive. So I'd invite families that had no disabilities to come with all the families that did have disabilities. And then I just saw this beautiful thing happen where it just naturally everybody just played, had fun.
Yeah.
And it was seeing the relief of the parents being able to take their kids somewhere where they, instead of being embarrassed, or they may feel embarrassed if they made too much noise, didn't have any of that. Just let everybody have fun. And it's sort of like, yeah. And then I suppose the biggest commitment that I did, which I'm probably most proud of, was we really struggled to take. We were going to take Sophie to Disneyland. We did take her to Disneyland, but the whole process of going to Disneyland is very traumatic if you've got a disabled child in a wheelchair trying to walk, because everybody can get a bit impatient and a bit self-centered. So when you're walking up the stairs to the plane, right foot Soph, left, get up there. And I could see people swearing and getting stressed out behind me, in front of me. And you finally sit down on the seat and you feel like, God, I'm knackered. And then she says, Dad, the worst word in the world. What's that, babe? I need to go to toilet. And I'm like, really? Looking at my wife, she's looking at me, well, it's your turn. And it was just stress. So what we ended up doing is we always noticed when we went to hire accessible lodges or facilities to go on holiday, we'd always seem to be paying extortion amount of money for something that looked like a hospital in a lodge sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I sort of went to our trustees. I think I've only been doing it about 3. I tell you what it was 2019 when COVID came. And we were a bit nervous about it, about COVID and everything. But just before that, I said to the trustees, and they completely crapped themselves, if I'm honest, if I'm allowed to say that word, because I was looking at one about £300,000. And it was a lodge that was only 10, and it was right in the residential area. So I wanted to make a statement. We're not on the edge, right in the middle. I'm going to adapt it, but I'm only going to adapt it with accessible toilets and ramps and an oxygenated bed and a profile bed which stops the disabled child falling out. The rest of it's going to look like a normal lodge. Anyway, the trustees, to be completely honest, I think they thought I was going to go away and it was going to die and not happen. And then there was a lovely, kind man that I met while I was networking once that lent me on a handshake, this is a true story, 300 grand. And he transferred the money into the foundation's account. I set up a payment plan to pay him back each month and just generating sponsorship and funds to do that. We paid it off, I think, about a year later. And to this day, we've done about 227 free holidays to families.
Wow.
That could be palliative care, that could be autistic, that could be motorbike accident, that could be whatever it may be. But the main reason we did it, because the divorce rate of people that were married with children with additional needs was about 80%. So I was conscious about I've got to try and keep marriages together. And I was conscious about whatever I can do in life, I can give people a break. And yeah, it's still there. We've still got it. It's in Leamington. And if any of your viewers who listen to this have something with additional needs, if they come through you, we're happy to give a holiday and to give the love.
And Nikki, I mean, it's so interesting everything you're saying, because I know a few people that have got children with special needs or disabilities, and you're right, the pressure on that marriage is huge, and I think again it's testament to you and Steph the fact you've navigated this together, and she was here helping you get set up for tonight, so she's still helping you really. I mean, thank God you've got her.
Yeah, absolutely punching above my weight big time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, she's also very, very lucky. But I mean, I think, it's fascinating to me because what you've done throughout this second half of your career is you've just, exactly what you said, is you've refused to let these people just sort of disappear in the background. You're like, no, we're going to get you on that boat. No, we're going to get you on holiday. And sometimes I think it just needs that. And it's incredible. And look, just thinking about everything you've taught Sophia, and you said, you sort of taught her about resilience, and you taught her the world isn't a very easy place all the time. What do you think she's taught you? What do you think the biggest lesson that she's taught you over these last 21 years?
I think her outlook on life and how she deals with her demons, even in her darkest days, she would always smile. She would always be polite to people. She'd always say, no, I'm okay. I'm all right. It's all good. She's always craved for love and friendship. She's literally is what you see is what you get. And she never complains about anything. She just never, ever says, like, why me? Why am I disabled? She may have inner thoughts about stuff, but she just never complains. And she comes home in a wheelchair, and it's like packing up a donkey with so much stuff. It's raining. She see it, Dad, off you go, smiles. She's a real hugger. And I think sometimes when I get my dark times through different stuff that we've gone through, whenever I see her, and when anybody sees her, they always feel, life's not as bad as what I'm going on about. And she's always smiley, always happy, and never moans about why me, about why am I disabled? Because I must admit, when we found out she had the disability, I just thought, God, what have I done wrong in my life? I must have been bad in some way, and looking at the heavens, thinking, why me? But she's never really ever sort of gone on about why am I disabled? Why did it happen to me? Or why is this? She's always,
Yeah.
she's just never like that. She's the opposite of that. And I think the reason why, and it was a tight between my wife and Sophia, was just because she could have easily, and I would have understood why she would have said, why me? Why am I disabled? Why am I
Yeah.
doing it? And I don't think she's not done that. She's gone on, she talks in front of 6,000 people about stuff. And yeah, she's just a trooper, an absolute trooper.
Yeah. And yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. It's that she's not played the victim. She's got
Yeah.
gratitude, and
Yeah.
that's a lesson for so many people, because you know there's so many people out there that have got their health, they've got good jobs, and yet they're feeling like the victim. And actually, it's like life could have been a lot harder. And actually, it's funny you say about maybe looking up and going, why me? Well, I'll tell you why you, because it's led to everything that you've done, and you've helped
I
all
agree
those
that.
families go on holiday, and none of that would have happened had Sophia, not
No,
been
and
born the way she is, and the
do you
brilliant
know
that she
what?
is.
That's really funny you say that, because that's exactly how I felt. I felt that the way that things have happened, I actually think, and it sounds awful, I don't want it to sound awful, the fact that she was born with a disability has actually made my life so much more fuller and more rewarding because of the understanding and empathy to people. So it's really weird. Men are funny people, how we deal with stuff. So I'll give you an example. Most men I've ever met, if I didn't meet you and I met you and you said, oh, have you got any kids? I'd say, yeah, my daughter's in a wheelchair and my son's Harvey. But 99% of men I've ever met, when I've told them about my stuff, they eventually come up to me and say, I need, my son's autistic. And I said, why didn't you tell me that earlier? I don't talk about it. Because most men don't, what they do is they either push themselves into work and work more hours, and they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to think about it. And they want to shove that thing in the corner. And men aren't very good at talking about stuff, or they drink a lot, drugs, whatever they may do, but they don't deal with the reality. And I think you're right. I think, have I become a better person? I think I've looked at things different.
I think we're getting better as men of speaking
Yes.
about our feelings and addressing our
Yes.
feelings. And I think it's fantastic that you're modeling that. A lot of men will look up to you because you're an ex-footballer, you're in business, you're a bloke's bloke, you motorbike.
Yeah.
But yet you're here
Yeah.
talking about your feelings, how you felt, that you had dark times. And I think that's really important as well. I think, having that modeling. So, I mean, Nikki, look, I could chat to you. I mean, you could chat to
I
anyone
know.
all night.
Sorry, I
That's
do
why
go on.
No. It's so good to see you. And I'd love, before I finish, I think it's important we mention your son. You mentioned Harvey. I mean, how's he doing now? I mean, he's also clearly a brilliant young man. And it's tough for him growing up with a disabled sister and navigating that, and maybe not feeling the center of attention. But, talk about how he's been brilliant as well.
Yeah, Harvey is amazing. I'm so proud of him. And there was a disconnect because when Harvey was a little boy, the whole, what beach we going to, we've got to go to an accessible beach, or everything
Yep.
was centered around Sophia. She'd get the tracksuit, she'd get the toys, she'd get everything. And Harvey, you've got to do your paper round, get out there. And it's almost like, you're not disabled, you should have empathy for her, And I guess over the last 3 or 4 years now, he's left school and he's an estate agent, is at the moment, and he's just immense. He's just immense, in very articulate, very deep, and he's my best friend, and in the sense that he's a very cuddly, tactile person. He's when you look at him, you think, how was someone 5'8" give birth to someone, or he's the dad of someone just under 6'2"? My friends often say he's not your son, but he's just brilliant. He's such a good giggle. He's such a laugh. He's his own man's man. Very articulate. He's very on it. And I love, if I'm honest, I love, when I said to you, I meant it. I speak to lots of people all the time. My life's quite hectic, but the day I can sit with him and have some fish and chips, or go out for a game of snooker, or just have a beer with me and him and have that dad and lad time. And it's weird. I remember, like, when I always get used to when Alan Ball was my manager, he's always introduce, oh, this is my son, Jimmy. And I never wanted to do that with Harvey. I didn't want to say, I was Nicky Banger is my son, Harvey Banger. He's Harv. And I always, because because Jimmy Ball would have always been, oh, you're Alan's son. And I said, I don't want it to be that way. And so when Harvey came out, he's half. He's the banger, and I love him for it. And I love he's brilliant at what he does, and I love being around him.
Yeah. And that's the important stuff. And I think, again, we get so wrapped up in sometimes the wrong things in life. And actually, it's the people around us and having
just
those
be
relationships.
Present.
Exactly, yeah. And you said something really important. It's about gratitude for life. It's also realizing that we're not here forever. So go and do the thing you want to be passionate about.
And take risks.
Take, oh, Nikki, God, you're saying all the
risks,
things, all the things. I know, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm so glad we could celebrate Sophia. And even just at the start when you said she's achieved what she wanted to achieve. And I think this is only the beginning. I think she's going to go on and do some really inspirational stuff, which is just incredible. But there's always the last question I ever ask on the podcast, every episode. The last question I ask is, what would you like to say to Sophia? What would you like to say to your brilliant human to wrap us up tonight?
Well, actually, for her 21st, there's a gentleman at this BNI network group I go to, and he got some old-fashioned paper, and I wrote her a letter to my daughter about what she meant to me, and it was something that was not jewelry, it wasn't anything, it was about how she made me feel complete, how proud I was, and to be honest, I just look in her eyes, hold her hands, and I just say, I just love you so much. And I think sometimes writing a letter in the present space for your daughter or your son, and just remember this while I'm living, and I just want you to have that. And that's what I did. And that's
amazing.
And it was just to embrace everything that's just perfect and beautiful about you. Not about getting a job or anything, just her being her. And that was it.
Yeah.
And that's why I love her so much.
That's amazing. And Nikki, and I think you just said that we don't really write letters anymore. And that's really made me think about, okay, who can I write a letter to? And it might be my mum or my dad. And I think I'm going to really take inspiration from that.
You just like a simple letter. I just love you so much. And it was in this what's the old pens used to do with the ink?
Like calligraphy pens.
Calligraphy pens, fountain pens. So all that sort of lovely writing. And I read it out on her 21st birthday, and in front of her, and I meant every word. It was just something that was personal in a nice envelope, nice piece of paper that she'd keep. And I think that's why I did it, and that's why she means so much to me. And why my son means so much to me, and my wife means so much to me. With all that, and I feel privileged. I've had such a brilliant career with football and life and stuff like that. But now I think I'm at home where I'm supposed to be, which is doing what I'm doing. Yeah, I feel
Nikki, 100%. You are exactly where you need to be. Like, there is not many people that could do what you've done and continue to do. And I always say on here, I get two brilliant people. Well, I've had many brilliant people mentioned in this podcast, but on this episode alone. But what I mean by that is we talk about Sophia as the brilliant human, but actually you're a brilliant human as well. And I honestly thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done for these families, because it's incredibly inspirational. And continue what you're doing. And we'll shout about the Knight Foundation as much as possible. So on that note, how can anyone find out more information if they want to get in touch about, becoming a patron or receiving, your support?
Well,
how can anyone find out about the Knight Foundation?
So the Knights Foundation, if you go on the website, LinkedIn, KNIGHTS, Knights Foundation, you'll see the array of families with special needs that we've helped. The lodge that we have is for everybody. It could be anybody, anywhere in the world, anybody with any disability, because the things in life is obviously family, but it's not just about helping with equipment. It's about what we do with the kids is, especially children with additional lives, whether they have eye gazes, they're talking to a laptop like we're talking to, and they get their voice through the contacts of their eyes. But most families with kids with autism or ADHD, they can sometimes look socially awkward in an interview. So I get a lot of CEOs of businesses giving up their time to do a mock interview so they can get the confidence to know what's going to be asked in the questions. Then we help them write their CVs. So we give them the skill sets to get employed. But to answer your question about that, we're on the website of the Knights Foundation, and it's on there. And all I'd say, if anybody needs any help or support, then go on there and they will find themselves to me. A patron is a business owner or decision maker that makes a monthly contribution. We currently have about 64. They're very, very important because I sometimes get offered by a lot of people to make donations, but having residual income coming in means you can just help more people.
Yeah.
And it's more
Yeah.
about not just the money, Jonathan. It's the case that you might be a CEO of a company and I might go to that CEO one day and say, you're making the monthly contributions. I appreciate that. But I've got little Johnny here who could really do with what it's like to have work experience. Can you help and give him an opportunity? Brilliant. It's going to be an asset to you. Yes, of course I can, Nick. Come and have a long. Let's have a look, see how he's getting on, and we'll try and see if we can help. Because the biggest fear with parents is when we're not here, you'd like to think they're independent and settled. And that's where I see the fear from mum and dad go. And that's why it's called diagnosis to independence, because through that journey, we don't just meet families at 2 years, 3 years old. We stay with the family right the way through to their kids are hopefully being educated to give the opportunity into business.
Yeah, incredible. Well, look, we'll share all the links on our page and on our socials as well. Nikki, it's so good to catch up with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a very happy birthday in a few weeks' time.
Thank you.
I hopefully we'll get to see each other in person very soon. But thank you so much. It's so
God
good
bless.
to see
Stay
you.
in touch. Have a good evening,
care.
Jonathan.
Bye.
Thank you very much for your time. God bless, mate. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Brilliant Humans podcast. If you've got a brilliant human you'd like to celebrate, then email us at brillianthumanspodcast@gmail.com to find out how to share their story. Or if you've got someone you'd simply like to thank, why not tell them now? It might just make their day. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to follow, like, or leave us a comment. It really helps more people discover these brilliant stories. See you next time.